A Saturday afternoon protest in Belfast city centre. Those that are gathered here are from all sides of the community, and they believe that their political representatives have allowed a public consultation on a proposed health bill to be anything but public.
I think when you put something out to the public, the very nature of a consultation is it's meant to be a communicative process. It's meant to be interactive with the people that you're trying to reach. If it's hidden and no one can give an opinion, then the opinions of the people writing that proposal will be the only ones that are carried forward.
And people are incensed when they have seen what's in the consultation document, because it's proposing legislation that would result in people potentially being arrested, brought into hospital, have medical examinations performed on them, and possibly mandatorily vaccinated as well. So quite justifiably people are outraged, and that's why there's so many people here today.
After COVID lockdowns, people are worried that an enhancement of government powers may cause further problems for a society that is still dealing with the last pandemic.
We've seen over the last 4 years or so of lockdown that government overreach. They're trying to implement tyranny through lockdown, and we've seen the consequences of that. We've seen like schools, children couldn't go to schools, and the mental health knock-on effects. We're seeing with the NHS waiting lists, whenever they close the country for a couple of weeks to flatten the curve. That's went on for several years. People operations, they can't see GPs anymore.
We did ask the Department of Health for comment, but none would be available while consultation was ongoing. Society is asking who's in charge and hope that public pressure will make decisions more transparent.
Our view is this bill should never even have got to this stage. On what authority did those in government, in the public legislation branch, in the Department of Health, what authority did they have to even put this through? This bill is in line with the likes of the Brexit and the likes of the Good Friday Agreement. It changes legislation. It changes how we're governed. So this has been ruled over, not governed with.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
Well, the Northern Ireland Department of Health previously said on this bill that Northern Ireland needs to replace outdated public health legislation that is more than 55 years old. We need legislation that covers infection and contamination from biological, chemical and radiological sources and brings us into line with the rest of the UK.
It's paying respect to Alex Salmond. Politicians and leading public figures alike have been paying tribute to the former First Minister of Scotland, who died at the age of 69.
Yes, Sir Keir Starmer described him as a monumental figure in Scottish politics, whilst King Charles expressed sadness over his sudden passing.
Well, the former SNP leader apparently died of a suspected heart attack just as he was giving a speech in North Macedonia yesterday morning.
Well, Salmond was First Minister of Scotland between 2007 and 2014 and was known for almost pushing Scottish independence over the line a decade ago.
Let's talk to the columnist Alistair Stewart, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. I mean, he's is and always was a bit of a Marmite figure, as the issue of independence is a Marmite issue. And yet you can't deny, can you, just what an impact Alex Salmond had?
No, it's impossible to deny it. He was undoubtedly, and still strange saying it in the past tense, but he was undoubtedly the foremost Scottish politician of his generation and arguably the last 25 years, certainly the lifetime of devolution. You're absolutely correct in your introduction that he was extremely close to pushing Scotland out of the United Kingdom. The fact that he managed to secure, in collaboration with the former Prime Minister David Cameron, the independence referendum in the first place, is tantamount to a lifetime well served in terms of Scottish politics. You were never going to top that once the decision was made to remain in the United Kingdom, and yet he still remained the central figure. The subsequent controversies that emerged within the SNP and his very acrimonious fallout with his successors, plural, didn't diminish the affection with which he was held, albeit slightly more secretly among members of the SNP. There was certainly among friends that I've got within the party just a slight wish that someone of his calibre could come back. Dare I say you will not see his like again, certainly not for a long time.
What will his legacy be, not only in Scotland, but also on the SNP?
I think his legacy is the fact that he got independence into the mainstream. The SNP, certainly when he was the first leader of it, that is to say in in the 1990s, and when he became leader the second time, it was still a fringe party. Independence was very much parallel to the Greens in the respect that they're there, you're aware they're there, but you don't actually know what a government would look like. Salmond managed to mainstream independence. He managed to mainstream the SNP to such an extent that, as you say, it came incredibly close to actually achieving that dream that so many held. Now, that is a legacy that is going to be difficult to surpass, given that independence itself has fallen by the wayside as to not only is it achievable within another generation, but what the mechanism actually is for having the question in the first place. Salmond achieved the question. He achieved the right to have the question. He achieved a reputational boom for the SNP by having it done legitimately, professionally, pragmatically with the UK government. And that is an incredible legacy to leave behind, and one that's going to be very difficult to top.
I mean, a slick political operator. I mean, it was. I mean, there was a slight level of confusion, wasn't it, around devolution. I mean, Scottish Parliament got up and running. There he was. Then he decided to leave and go back to Westminster, which seemed an extraordinary move at the time. Why did he do what he did?
I can't speak to Mr. Salmond's motives, but I think it's widely known that he preferred the more combative environment of Westminster. Holyrood is an incredibly structured place. You've got X amount of time to speak within a debate. It's very committee-driven. There is a pantomime performance at Westminster, as you'll know. There is a degree of grandstanding. There's an opportunity to self-promote, and none of these things are bad things, but it's the reality of that more combative arena of the green benches. I think Alex Salmond preferred that degree of political combativeness. I think it was a signature feature of his style. I think it did him very well. But if there's a question as to why he went back to the UK stage, I think it's very much that opportunity to self-promote and to have a more aggressive style of debating that you just don't see at Holyrood now, and you certainly won't see again for a long time.
What have you made of the tributes that have been pouring in over the last day or so across the political spectrum, but especially the one from the former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, alluding to the breakdown of their relationship in recent years?
The former First Minister had to say something. It would have been incredibly odd if she didn't. Good on her and fairness to acknowledge the fact that this very, very public breakdown took place. She didn't try and dodge that. She had to say it. Salmond was her mentor for many, many years. She served as his deputy. They together formed quite the political duo in Scotland, and it was a very much a deal between them that nearly got independence over the line. But the acrimonious nature of their fallout, and indeed Alex Salmond's fallout within the SNP, was incredibly well known. It still sent shockwaves throughout the party and the Scottish political landscape. There was a feeling that when that took place, independence itself was very much off the table, because if mum and dad are falling out, then what hope do the rest of us have? But her tribute, I imagine she must have mixed feelings about today. Obviously, enormous sadness that her former mentor has passed. Everyone thinks that they have more time than they actually do to start today on a slightly macabre note, but nevertheless, she had to acknowledge like most people in Scotland have to acknowledge, that while it is sad that he has passed, his legacy is an enormous one, and indeed one that's going to be hard to live up to politically.
I mean, it is a shame in a way to sort of take it away from party politics, if you like, in the argument of independence. That a man who, excuse me, spent most of his political life pushing for, the SNP to be more than just this nuisance in politics, to actually become this significant political party. At the time of his passing, the party's still in a whole heap of trouble. I mean, it's never quite survived in the same way after he stood down.
No, that's absolutely correct. And in many ways, if you want to join the dots, this really started when he resigned in 2014. He was such a big figure within the party and within Scottish politics that often, if you were an observer of it, you felt that Alex Salmond was driving the whole thing. Nicola Sturgeon, by contrast, when she assumed the mantle of First Minister, was a much more pragmatic, slightly more softly spoken figure who herself had to resign. Then he has had successive First Ministers in place who have just not had that same appeal. You described him as a Marmite figure. Marmite status is often the best status to have because at the very least you're acknowledged and recognised and respected by your foes and friends alike. John Swinney is an incredibly capable man. I think with time he'll prove to be an effective First Minister, but he doesn't have a plan to drive independence forward. And ambiguous voters, those are who are undecided, and those who are not going to support the SNP aren't going to change their mind now. It's appealing and encouraging and inspiring his own support base. And if you remove independence from that, what are you left with? Very much the status quo of the minute, which doesn't reflect well as we go into the next round of Holyrood elections.
Indeed. Alistair, good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.